All right, everyone. Nikkihaley has also gone off the rails with a simple Twitter post the other day. I had to weigh on it. Link in the description. That's my response, which is basically Nikkihaley's a crazy lady at this point. And her tweet was very simple. It was, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Let me debate that point, because I think you're off the rails. And based on some rising state laws and so forth, that would effectively mean that you want to prosecute people. Like in the state of Florida, if you were to therefore put up a billet, I guess, that says, I oppose, Israeli expansion in the settlements or something, well, that's an elements of Zionism, and therefore you're going to jail for 10 years. You could make that legal argument, and that's definitely a fucking problem. When I see the Republicans immediately abandoning the concept of free expression because a war involves Israel, it's very, very, very odd. Well, I mean, it's not odd in the sense I'm not surprised by it. It's just odd strategically. It's also odd that people aren't calling them out for it. You've basically got a wing of the party, the populist wing, that's been arguing against all forms of censorship as much as possible for the last half decade, immediately do a 180 with a few exceptions. I don't support, for example, DeSantis' new rule about the student unions in Florida because the application is through HB 269. I think if a student group is funding terrorism, you should establish that in the court and put people in prison. I don't think that randomly abolishing the student group is really a meaningful solution. The students still have the same views, will hold the same rallies, etc., and they'll have to get a private space to have their student organization in, which they can easily get fundraising for anyway. Now, Florida's diverse. There's plenty of people there that probably do support Hamas. As to whether any individual student does or not, that remains an open question. Nikkihaley is very confused here, though. Zionism effectively is bipolar in one fashion. One element of it is the establishment of Israel, so the existence of a Jewish state roughly where Judea was. That's one element. As far as that element, by the way, of Zionism, the existence of a Jewish homeland, is not itself problematic. Mostly the criticism there has to do with its expansionism. That's the other end, the imperialistic side of it. You have messed with us in some historical fashion or contemporary fashion, so now we're annexing things. We see this ongoing in the West Bank, for example. Israel continues to resettle areas with Jewish settlers in the West Bank. We see this now, unfortunately, as well in Gaza, which Israel unilaterally gave to the Palestinians some years ago. Some people forget that, by the way. Now they're saying, but we're going to re-annex a chunk of this land to create a security buffer zone. So, however much acreage of Gaza is yours, but you can't do anything with it. We're not going to allow you to. And it's basically, in both of these cases, it's a statement that this third party, the Palestinians, is the subjugate. You're eventually going to be shooed aside because you're not going to have any land to actually dwell in. And you'll be completely reliant upon Israel for getting any form of outside help anyway, so you can't do anything. Your plight is to be squeezed out of what is your land, according to agreements and speculation and debate, which is the other part. There's no final binding sort of decision that's been made with regards to where these borders even are supposed to lie. You got 4 or 5 different iterations of them. At one end, of course, Hamas says, no, there are no Israeli borders. It's all our land. We're the ones that are supposed to be here. You came in and colonized it. It's also a left-wing argument. Rashida Tlaib, by the way, refusing to back down on her comments with regards to the hospital strike there, which is interesting because at this point we're pretty sure that your original story has been debunked. Then at the other end, on the hyper-Zionistic end, you've got, no, this is all just Israel. And it's going to extend from the sea much further past where it currently is, by the way. It's going to extend to the Euphrates, all the way up into what's now Turkey and all the way down into the Arabian Peninsula. Under certain Zionistic premises, and those are the imperialistic ones, that is Israel. So Israel encompasses much of the Levant and areas immediately adjacent. Then you've got the more tempered down versions, which, maintain the current borders. Palestinians are slowly getting pushed off the land, even though they're increasing in number. And then you have Jews, actually, that oppose the premise. There are Jewish religious movements that don't believe that a state of Israel should even exist in accordance with their religion. They find it sinful. because they don't believe that Israel is supposed to exist until it's established by their deity. So these are hyper, religious Jewish individuals. You'll see them protesting, by the way, sometimes on behalf of Palestine. In full Jewish garb, they're observant. They're dedicated Judaists, often mystic in premise. And they don't believe that Israel is allowed to exist. They think it's literally an affront to their God. And so Nikkihaley is rather confused because she's making a very reductionistic statement about a political ideology that has a multifaceted sort of approach, and about a religion slash ethnicity and slash culture that has the same. You'll find Jews, for example, that are fundamentally atheistic, but they consider themselves Jews. That's mainly on the ethnic premise. You've got people who practice Judaism, but they're of solidly Norwegian descent or something like that. That's another problem. People say Jews, and it's like, well, what do you even mean? Which component or all of them are you even talking about? No, anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism, because a person could have absolutely no fucking problem with Judaism, Jews themselves, or even with Israel, and simply have a problem with the premised expansionism of the more imperialistic side. That would be properly deemed an element of Zionism. Nikkihaley apparently thinks that's anti-Semitic. So if you don't want some imperialistic individual in Israel to push for invading Iraq and taking all the land all the way to the Euphrates, would that also be anti-Semitism? What about if the only thing that you condemn is the open-air prison of Gaza, which is probably the most easily criticized thing that Israel gets up to, or the settlements in the West Bank or something? You're like, well, Israel's fine, the Jews are fine, but, they keep going into these other areas, which are at least semi-sovereign, and choking the life out of people through, blockading their water supply and stuff like that. And they're incredulous about why that should be tolerated by the international community. I guess Nikkihaley thinks that they just hate and want to kill all Jews or something like that. Nope, anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. Just like criticism of the state of Israel is not anti-Semitic. I criticize the state of Israel. Also criticize the state of Palestine, because that whole region of the world, there's pretty much nothing but criticism to offer to many of these governments, and many non-state actors, and many so-called activistic groups. The Temple Institute does a lick of work. They're trying to cause the end times according to Christianity, but for some reason some boomer Christians still support the premise. You realize it isn't Jesus who immediately comes back. You've got to go through the Antichrist first. You're a boomer and stuff. You're getting your Social Security pension by now. Have fun. Thanks. The boomers brought the Antichrist down. So one last suffering for the millennials that have had to suffer already for our entire lives under bad socioeconomic conditions. Thanks. That's about all. Peace out.